Hey, it's 2018 and it's time for another Ride Engineering project bike video. This year we were going to do one on either the Yamaha or the Suzuki because those 450s had the most revisions for 2018. But let's face it, the Suzuki really hasn't been changed since 2008, so we decided to go with yellow. The Suzuki didn't do so great in the shootouts, finishing in 6th place. So it's definitely going to take a little work to get it up to par with the class leader, the 2018 CRF 450R. But for you Suzuki fans, I get it. Nothing handles like the Suzuki. This bike is really great when it comes to turning. So today, we're out here at Competitive Edge, and we brought out two bikes. We brought out the stock bike for comparison, and we also have two pro riders. We've got Gary Sutherlin, who's the 2017 Works Champion, and he's kind of representing the off-road and desert guys. And then we got Carlen Gardner out here, and he's a Supercross and motocross rookie, and he made the main events at both Anaheim and Houston. What I've asked these guys to focus on today are 4 things: chassis balance, handling, braking, and engine power. Suzuki made a lot of changes to this frame and actually made the bike shorter. So a lot of guys are having trouble getting the bike set up to be able to ride it aggressively. People are running about 115 millimeters of sag, and the back end gets too low, and the bike feels a little bit unpredictable and unstable. With our link, you can run the sag at a more normal 107, 108 millimeters of sag. You run your forks between 5 and 7 millimeters from flush, and that should get the bike working pretty good for you.
Yeah, when I jumped on the stock bike, I definitely didn't know how I was going to react. First thing I felt was it kind of kicked around a little more. Definitely didn't feel as planted in the corners. But right away when I got on the Ride Engineering bike, it definitely found exactly what I was looking for. When you got in the rut, it stayed planted, didn't want to pull out on me. It didn't kick out unnecessarily. It would go through it smooth.
Once you got your performance link, if you still aren't quite happy with your bike, I highly recommend you take it to a reputable suspension shop. We took ours to Precision Concepts, and they revalved and resprung it to keep the suspension holding up more, and that actually allows the bike to feel a little bit more plush on smaller, choppy bumps. And then they ramped it up quite a bit at the end of the stroke to absorb the bigger hit.
It was a little soft in some areas, but it held up when it needed to. It cornered real great.
First thing I noticed on the track with Ride Engineering's RMZ450 was way more stability. The bike seemed a little more balanced and more connected to the ground over the stock model.
For handling, I went ahead and swapped out the stock triple clamps for a set of our 22 offset triple clamps. Now, it's not the 0.5 millimeter more offset that's really making the difference here. It's the fact that our clamps are designed more like last year's triple clamps. This allows the front end to be more forgiving and just gives the bike a softer feel entering corners. You can add the Showa dampener kits that we offer, and that helps to calm the front end a little bit more.
A big thing I noticed, the steering stabilizer had on it. On the fast straightaways, when I was coming up to the jump, if I was leaning back, I definitely felt on the stock bike, the front end was a little bit loose, to where on this bike, I didn't have as much front wobble on it, and it was tracking all the way up the face of the lip better.
Also, one thing I noticed was the forgiveness in the front end provided by his Ride Engineering's triple clamps. I feel like it definitely helped flex in the front end and help that rigidity feel.
This bike, being the heaviest in class, can definitely use a little more help in the braking department. We added braided steel brake lines front and rear to reduce fade. We added our 270 wave rotor, mostly for weight savings. And then we added our billet front brake caliper, which has bigger pistons and gives you a softer, more progressive feel at the lever.
I definitely noticed on the stock bike, the brakes were good or not good. They were really, really touchy, to where on this bike, they had a good feel all the way through. You could drag it. It wasn't real crazy when you pulled on it. It didn't stop immediately. It had good power all the way through. What do you think about them?
I noticed a lot of ease coming into the corner as far as like modulation. The brakes were right there when you needed them, but they weren't overpowering to where you'd watch the front end.
The engine power is another area this bike definitely needed some improvement in. This bike almost needs to be ridden a gear lower everywhere just to keep up. But I didn't want to go inside the motor with cams and pistons. I wanted to just use some bolt-on parts and make it easier for everyone to kind of get the motor up to speed without too much work. So I started with an FMF mid-pipe and exhaust canister, but we left the stock header. We found that helped with the bottom end a little bit more. I added a 1/2 larger rear sprocket, and then we ended up getting a Vortex ignition for it. The Vortex ignition is huge. With other brands, you can map the stock ignitions, but the Suzuki you can't. And our Vortex came pre-programmed with several maps in it, and their performance map, map 1, really brought this bike to life.
The throttle response was a lot better. Definitely had more snap to it, all bottom and mid. The top end fell off a little bit. I would ride this bike over the stock feeling. Everything felt great. The throttle response would be my preferred way with this ignition.
This bike is the heaviest bike in class. I got 4 pounds off the bike, and I did that by using some titanium. The FMF exhaust system saved 2 pounds. The Raptor foot pegs saved about 7 ounces. And by the way, they're available from Ride Engineering now. And Rocky Mountain sent us a little 6mm fastener kit that's all titanium hardware, and that saved a 1/4 pound. Our favorite X20 Bridgestone tires saved 1 pound, and all the Ride Engineering accessories on this bike would have saved 10 ounces, except the steering dampener. That added back 7 for a net loss of 3 ounces.
It was actually really good. I'm not a big fan of 450s that have so much power to where it feels like it's out of your control. You know, even with some work done to it. My personal style is I like when it doesn't have too much there, but it has the power when you need it.
Coming off riding Suzuki's this year so far, jumping on Adrian's Ride Engineering bike and being impressed and feeling like, wow, I can really push this bike to the next level. I definitely think with these upgrades that it's hands down a competitor in the 450 class.
There you have it. Now you guys can take this bike from last place to first. And by the way, what did you guys think of the Backyard Designs graphic kit?
Depends on what you put on it extra, but everything ties together real nice. I like the blue with the yellow. It looks pretty good to me.
I think the icing on the cake is the raccoon design right here on the shroud. I think that's what makes the graphic kit perfect.